The jQuery library consists of 4 broad categories of extensions. Interactions support ways of letting the user interact with elements on a web page, including the ability to drag and drop elements, resize them, make them selectable in various ways, and allow the user to sort elements in whatever order they want. Widgets, and yes, that's what they call them, are a collection of user interface components, including a date picker, dialog boxes, tabs, and a slider, and a whole bunch of other ones. Effects in the UI library go far beyond the animations that are available in the core jQuery library. And in fact, this is probably one of the most compelling reasons to use the user interface library. You can animate color transitions, class changes, as opposed to just a set of properties that you define in the animate method, and 15 other effects that go well beyond the fading and sliding in and out supported in the core library. And then utilities act as a grab bag of other functions. The only utility currently available, but they are planning a lot more, so the only utility now available supports element positioning that goes well beyond the positioning features in CSS. Near-term additions are probably going to support templating and a data model, and these are features that Microsoft is working on, as well as globalization and other features. Now, the UI library makes heavy use of CSS styles in order to create themes for the UI features, primarily using interactions and widgets, so that they have a consistent look and feel. There's more than 20 standard themes that you can download along with the UI library, and you can tweak those in order to fit the appearance of your web page. Now, you can either write CSS code by hand or use the online theme roller tool, and that's available on the jQuery UI website, in order to make changes to a theme and then download it, which makes it ready to drop into your website. Now, as you explore the features of jQuery UI, it's really easy to get a sense of why Microsoft so easily abandoned development of their AJAX control toolkit, which was based on their own Microsoft AJAX library. Once they decided to switch to jQuery and support it instead, it really became a no-brainer to also embrace jQuery UI, which is far richer than the AJAX control toolkit ever was. Now, at this time, Microsoft doesn't ship the UI library with any of their tools, but I really suspect that that's going to be a logical next step in the evolution of Microsoft's support for jQuery. The jQuery UI library is huge if you include every feature. It's unlikely that any single website project is going to use them all, so the library is split into many files, and you can use whatever you need within a web page. In order to customize the library, the jQuery UI website lets you build a custom download package with only the elements that you need. You can also select a theme as a starting point for customizing it to your needs. So let's see how you can download that library from the jQuery website. Here's the download page for the jQuery UI library. As you can see, I've gone to jQueryui.com and clicked on the download link. And this is where you can customize the download file. As you scroll around the page, you can see that it's broken up into UI cores, interactions, widgets, and effects. And you can select individual items that you want to include. Now, there are a number of interdependencies between these different items. And so it prevents you from unselecting items. I'm trying to click on that to deselect it. But a lot of the other elements on the page depend upon the UI core. And this is required for all interactions and widgets, so it doesn't let me get rid of it. But if I wanted to deselect various other elements here, I can select on those items. I wasn't able to deselect this one because other elements that were previously selected depended upon this draggable interaction. All right, and so you can go through the rest of the page. Then you can deselect all components and select all components. For this example, I'm going to go ahead and select and download all of the components. And notice, too, there's a few links at the top for downloading stable versions of themes and so forth. But in general, what you're going to want to do is select one of the pre-built themes and then download that. I'm going to accept the UI lightness. It's one of the themes that will work. But you could also go in and design a custom theme as well. And I'll do that a little bit later. All right, so I've finished making all my selections. I can select the version number. So in this case, I'm going to use version 1.8.11. And just like the jQuery library, this is constantly getting updates. Not quite as often as the core library, but often enough. But this is the version that's stable and is used for jQuery 1.3.2 and higher. And then you can also select a legacy release if you're using jQuery 1.3.2. All right, I'll go ahead and download this. Save the file. And I will put this a little bit more accessible place here on the C drive and in samples. And it downloads the file. Then I can open up the folder and see that zip file and can explore the contents. Actually, what I'll do is extract all the files. And I'll go ahead and put this in the samples directory under that file name. So as you can see, it's a pretty big file, 2.82 megs. And there are the contents. There's a lot here. A lot of what is downloaded isn't actually part of the UI library, but it has a lot of information, some samples, and some information. So I can double-click on the index file there, and I have this custom Welcome to jQuery UI page. I'm looking at the local page that I just downloaded. So this contains a recap of what I built on the download site. Included everything in this particular case. And it includes any theme that I selected. And you'll definitely want to make sure that you downloaded the proper version for that corresponds to the version of the jQuery core library. Because if you try to use an incompatible version of the UI library, you'll definitely have problems. Okay, then it includes a little bit of samples. It's not comprehensive, doesn't have everything, but it shows the accordion feature here, shows how you can expand different sections, tabs, and these are all features of the jQuery UI library. You can open up a dialog box, custom dialog, and select various dates, and look at the progress bar. Okay, again, this is not a comprehensive example of everything in the UI library, but it gives you a feel for the sorts of elements that it includes. All right, back over to Windows Explorer. Then there's also this CSS folder, and this contains the theme files, the CSS and image files for, in this case, the UI lightness theme. So in this case, what you can do is you can copy the theme folder into your website project and use it directly. But you'll definitely want to make sure that you keep the images folder as the child of the folder that contains this cascading style sheet. Otherwise, you'll have to change a whole bunch of links within the style sheet in order to point to the new location of the images. So you certainly can. You can modify the CSS file, but it's a bit of a pain. All right, so if we go back, we also have this JS folder, and this has the JavaScript files, both for the jQuery library itself, and notice that it's up to version 1.5.1, which, as I record this, is actually one minor version behind the latest version of the jQuery library. But the UI library tends to take a little bit of time, needs a little bit of time to catch up with each new release. And then here's the JS file that implements all of the JavaScript that you need in order to use the jQuery UI. And this is a rather large file, 204K, because I included all of the features within the jQuery UI library. Had I selected only a very small subset of features, then this would have been a much smaller file. Now, this is a minified version of that file, so all of the white space has been released. During development and as you're learning the library, you might want to use the quick download link at the top of the download page in order to get the development version of the component files. These versions have comments and white space to make it much easier to read and understand, particularly if you step into it as you debug your application, the client-side code within your page. All right, and then this last folder here is Development Bundle. And this contains various demos, documentation, licenses, and lots of other resources to explore. As you're learning the UI library, it definitely would be well worth your time to explore what this folder contains. All right, so once the theme and the script files are in your website folders, you need to copy that stuff over. Then you can proceed to use them like any other CSS and script files, and include them in a web page using link and script elements. So even though the UI library consists of many CSS and JS files, JavaScript files, the custom download greatly simplified using them by combining them all into single files of each type. In fact, if you go ahead and use the quick links in order to download the entire library, then you'll actually get multiple JavaScript files that you'll need to take a look at and explore, rather than this unified JavaScript files. Even though they're professionally designed and, frankly, very well implemented, it's highly unlikely that any of the more than 20 standard themes is going to work for any website, at least work unaltered. This is a problem because a typical UI theme.css file is several hundred lines of CSS code and uses some interesting techniques, particularly for images, that would be hard to create manually. You can certainly create it manually, but it would take an awful lot of work. So creating a new theme from scratch shouldn't be your first option. On the other hand, it's quite likely that one of the standard themes is reasonably close to what you need, and with tweaking could work nicely for you. In that case, you have two options. Tweak the CSS code manually, or use the Theme Roller tool on the jQuery UI website. No matter how strong your CSS skills are, by far the easiest and most reliable way is to use the Theme Roller. So let's take a look at how you can do that. Here I am back on the jQuery UI library download page. In order to go into the Theme Roller, I just click on that link right there, and I get this default page. It's set up to initially allow me to roll my own theme. Now that takes an awful lot of work. Even with the Theme Roller, it would take an awful lot of work to go down through here and set all these various properties. They are set to default values, but it's kind of a boring theme. I guess it's serviceable enough and so forth, but you don't have to start with this theme. Instead, I can come over to the gallery, and I can select any of the built-in themes and use them as a starting point. So I'll go ahead and select the UI lightness, and now that applies the theme to this part of the page. And then I can come back over to Roll Your Own, and then start making changes. But now all of the settings here have been set to correspond to that current theme. Then I can go ahead and make changes. I can come into font settings here and change the font, change the weight to normal. As you can see, it automatically updates things and so forth. And then once I'm happy with it, I can click on the Download Theme button, and I've downloaded my custom theme. So I'll go ahead and do that. And so I have the custom theme. I'll download the file now. And once again, save it. I'll put it in the same location, overwrite what I have. And open up that folder again. All right, I'll go ahead and extract all the files. Put it in the same place. Okay. And now I have this custom theme folder. All right, so that's all it takes in order to customize that theme. I can certainly go in, if I double click on this, open it up in Notepad. Notepad is not good. Let me open it up in Visual Studio instead. Okay, a little bit easier to see this. And you can see the theme definition. And if you go all the way down to the bottom, you can see that there's 573 glorious lines of cascading style sheet code. All right, so this is all well and good, but what happens if you need to tweak this theme just a little bit more? Well, the creators of the jQuery UI library and Theme Roller thought about that. If you scroll down here just a little ways here, you can find this section here. To view and modify this theme, you can visit this link. Now what's interesting here is that that link is a very, very long link. What it contains within its contents is all of the values for the custom settings that you can set within the theme roller. So if you click on this link and open it up within your browser, in fact there's a better view of it, then you'll be taken to the theme roller in a state that shows your custom theme. You don't have to go back in, remake changes to get it to the state where you originally downloaded it. You're all set to go. You can tweak it, any additional settings that you need to change, and then you're good to go, download it again, and it's all updated. So it's a very slick process. All right, so you have the UI library, it's downloaded, and if you take my suggestion, you originally download the entire library. How can you really explore and play with it? Well, that's pretty easy. If I come back over to this directory, there I have the samples and my custom theme. Remember I mentioned this developer bundle folder here. This folder contains a whole bunch of demos. The pages are very simple, very well designed, and have code that you can copy into your own projects. So I can go here into Demos and open up the index page. And this gives me an entree into this demo page. So if I want to explore, say, color animation, I can click on that link there. Very often, a single demo page has multiple examples. This one just happens to have one. And then I can toggle the effect. As you can see, that's the effect of animating color. Remember that the core jQuery animate method can't animate colors because they're not single scalar numeric values. But you can with the UI library. You can look at, say, the effect class, and you can run and test different effects. Here's a bounce, explode, puff. Okay, so lots of different examples there. And you can also explore easing. This is a different sample. Okay, and my current browser doesn't support Canvas. That's a newer feature of HTML5, and later versions of Internet Explorer and Firefox do support that. Okay, so let's go to something that we actually can look at. How about show? Run the different effects, and there you go. The nice thing here, too, is that you can open the demo in a new window. This is really nice because if you look at the source code for this page, this index page, it has all of the code in HTML in order to implement this sidebar here, all the examples and lists of them and so forth. But if I just go here, I can have a page that has just that demo itself. And if I look at the source code, it's much cleaner, and it's very easy in order to extract the scripting code as well as the HTML code. So I can close this page. All right. There's a few things to notice about this sample page. The list of UI library features on the left is grouped into interactions, widgets, effects, and utilities. And I can scroll down to see utilities down here. And there's some additional stuff about the jQuery UI. So this lets you find exactly the effect that you want to explore. And then I mentioned each of the effects often has multiple examples that you can explore that show off different features of that interaction or other UI feature. And then I showed how you can open up the demo in a new window. And you can also just directly click on the View Source here in order to display the source within the page right there. All right. And often there's a little bit of an explanation about what each of the samples does. And again, the nice thing about this is that the source code for these sample pages is relatively simple and clean. And it has tabs and content located within list items, divs, and paragraphs. The only custom code needed to implement rich tab features, for example, is a small bit of JavaScript that specifies the mouse over event as the trigger to change tabs. So that's one example of the demos that you can use within this page. It's definitely worthwhile taking some time to explore everything that's contained within this development bundle folder. You get it when you download the library, And it provides a lot of resources that often you can just directly copy into your project. Now, I've talked about it a little bit, but there's several steps involved in building a page using the jQuery UI. First thing you need to do is build the custom jQuery UI library online. And again, it's going to be the very unusual project where you want to include all of the features of the UI library, so you'll want to pick and choose. And then you download that custom file, and then copy the .js and .css files as appropriate for the features of the UI library that you're going to use. Then you add references to the page, script references, and include the cascading style sheet. And then build the page using UI features. So what I'm going to do is show you this process and build a sample page that animates color transitions. Now the interesting thing about this is that it doesn't use theme elements. So I don't need to include a theme within the custom UI library that I'm going to download, which makes the download even smaller, because these are just methods that I need to implement from within the library itself. There's nothing visual that is part of the UI library, which is one of the many ways to use the tools. All right, so let's take a look at building a page using the UI library. First thing I need to do is create and download another custom jQuery UI library. This is going to be a little bit more realistic because I don't want the entire library. So I'll click on the Build Custom Download link. And I'll start by deselecting all components, starting from a clean slate. Then I want to come down here to the Effects section and just include the Effects core. This is the only feature that I'm going to need for the page that I want to create. And it's one of the very few, maybe the only one, that doesn't have a dependency on other UI library features. Now the page isn't going to use any of the UI library's visual elements, so I don't need a theme. So I'll just accept that default of no theme. I want the latest version, and I'll go ahead and download that file. I'll save that, and I have a project that I've already created called jQuery UI or JQUI. So I'll go ahead and save that file right there. And then I'll open up that folder. And in this case, all I want to do is extract the custom JS file. Notice that this file is a mere 4K, unlike the more than, about 200,000 bytes that of the full UI library. I only selected the effects core, so I have a very tight, small file. So I can go ahead and copy this. I want to put this within the application. I'll put it within the scripts folder. As you can see, I already have the jQuery 1.5 library there. All right, now I'll go over to Visual Studio. As you can see, I have a project created. No files in it yet, but I want to look at all the files and include that jQuery UI file within the scripts folder. All right, so that's everything I need to do to get set up. Now I need to add the page. So I'll go in here and add a new item, select a new HTML page, and I'm going to name this Fun Facts. .NET language doesn't matter because all I'm going to do is create a static HTML page. Well, static with a lot of JavaScript code in it. All right, so I'll set up the page. I'll give it a title of Alaska Fun Facts. And then I'll also add the site CSS file, give it a little bit of styling. And then I'll also add the jQuery 1.5 library, as well as that custom jQuery UI file. And we have a little bit of Visual Studio weirdness. So I'll save that file, close it, and open it back up. And there we go. Next thing I need to do is add some content to the body. And what I'll do here is add a div tag and give it an ID equal to div facts. add an H3 header here and say Alaska Fun Facts. And then enter a few fun facts in an unordered list. First one is that the date of statehood is, or was, January 3rd, 1959. Beat out Hawaii by just a few months. Capital is Juneau. State bird is the willow ptarmigan. State flower is the forget-me-not. And one more, that we have a state tree, interestingly enough, and that's the Sitka spruce. Very majestic tree down in southeast Alaska. All right, so those are the fun facts, the content of the page. Then I'm also going to come down here and add a button. And it's type button. And give that an ID of button morph. Because I'm going to write some code that is going to morph those fun facts. Change the color. All right, so that's the content of the page. I'll go ahead and save that. Next thing I'm going to do is add a custom style to the page. And I'll do that with a style element. Set that equal to a type of text CSS. And I'm going to use that to style the div facts element. I'm going to set the background color to silver. So it's going to be the starting state of that element. And it would actually help to spell it correctly. Then I'm going to set the font color to black. The border to a 1 pixel solid red. The width of the element to 300 pixels. And set some padding. I'll set it to 5 on the top, 5 on the right, 15 on the bottom, and 5 on the left. All right, so that's going to style the initial appearance of that div element. Save once again. And now I'm ready to add the scripting code. So I'll add that as the last in the line. The script is going to depend on both the jQuery library and the UI library, so I need to place it down here. And this is going to be JavaScript. And what the code is going to do is use the toggle method of the UI library and extensions to the animate method in order to animate the block of text on the page from black text on a silver background to white text on a teal background. And it's going to do that over a 5-second duration. All right, so in order to do that, I'm going to use the jQuery ready method. And I'm going to use the toggle method to define 2 anonymous functions that take care of performing the animation. All right, so the first thing I need to do is get a reference to that button, because I need to define the toggle method on that button. There we go there. Okay. All right, and then define the first function. This is the function that is going to execute when I first click on that toggle button. So what I need to do here is get a reference to that div facts. And then use the jQuery animate method. Now this is actually a supercharged animate method because I'm including the jQuery UI library, and I downloaded that effects core. All right, I'm going to pass in an object literal to set the background color to this value. Okay, it would help to turn on numlock. Hopefully I didn't introduce any syntax errors there. So that's the background color, and then the color of the font. And I'll set that to FFFFFF. Okay, so that sets the target values for those two color properties. Keep in mind that you can't do this with the regular jQuery core library animate function because you can't animate colors. And I'm going to take care of doing that over 5 seconds. Make it nice and long so that you can see the effect in motion. All right, so that's that first function. All right, let's see. I always get my brackets off a little bit. So I think that's the one I need to add a comma to, should be. So this is the second toggle. Yeah, okay, this looks good. Okay, so now what I need to do is define the anonymous function that will run when I toggle it the next time. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy this code in because I'm just changing the values of those properties. All right, so I'm going to set this back to CO, 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 and the font color there. And I'll also do that over 5 seconds. All right, so that's the code that I need. And it looks like, let me save this. Looks like I have some unmatched brackets here. So I have that function coming down there. And that actually belongs down here. I'm going to have to match all my brackets up. Okay, the syntax error has gone off. Hopefully that takes care of everything. Okay. So again, what this code is doing is it's animating the block of text from black text on a silver background to white text on a teal background. And it does that over a 5-second duration. And toggle is going to call this function to change the state of the text, and then call the second function in order to toggle its state. All right, so save it again, and let's go ahead and run this and see if I got it right. All right, there's the initial view of the page. I can toggle the effect, and notice that over a 5-second duration, it changes background color and the color of the text. And I can toggle it back to its original view. As you can see, it's pretty easy to add very sophisticated effects to a page using the jQuery UI library. The cost is that it's an additional file, or it might be multiple files depending on the features you use, that need to be downloaded for the browser to display the page, but it can be some very powerful effects.